Good morning. Wait for some people to show up. Good morning. Good morning. Guess it might be afternoon for people who are on the East Coast. So good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. I hadn't really thought about that before. But it's full on 1 o'clock. Yeah. Good morning. We are live. I can see it on my other phone. Yep. Good morning. Happy you guys are back. It's Sew Together Tuesday on Wednesday, so it's a little bit confusing. Sew Together Tuesday part 2. Today we are back again working on the little puff quilt, or all the other names that you might know for it. We did a bunch of the squares yesterday, and we're going to continue working on it today. I'm Teresa Coates. I'm the National Educator for Shannon Fabrics, and we're making a puff quilt this week out of Cuddle fabric. So it's a pretty fun little project. Yesterday we did all of the cutting. Well, I did all the cutting before that, but we talked about the cutting. We cut 5-inch squares of the Cuddle fabric. We used our sweet strips. So we cut 5-inch squares of the Cuddle and 4-inch squares of the cotton, and then we sewed them together. I'm going to show you guys in a little bit another way that I figured out to sew these together. Just one other technique as I sewed all of these last night and this morning. So figured out some things as I sew it. That's usually the way this goes, is that I try things, I figure out new things along the way. Basically the same thing as before. So we had a couple of questions yesterday, and now I lost that paper. Hold on. Hi guys, welcome back. If you have questions, ask me. Somebody asked a question yesterday. I'm not going to find my paper. Oh, there it is. I wrote it down. This might not be the one I wrote it on. Oh goodness. Okay, one of them was, what is my tattoo? The other one was like a legit question. Did you see that question come through? And that's been asked before. So here, you can see the tattoo. Figure that out at the beginning. So it's just a make that I designed. Yeah, so that was my 48th birthday present to myself, I think. That was 2 years ago. So that's what that is. So somebody had asked, and then this side says do. So I did those together because sometimes I make and sometimes I do and sometimes I have to make do. So ta-da, there we go. I know they don't really get shown very much, and it is sort of an important thing. And anyway, somebody had asked, so there you go. The other thing was important too, and it was about Luxe Cuddle, I'm pretty sure. So if you have questions, we'll pass them over. Again, make sure we talked a little bit about some of the basics yesterday. So if you have any questions about the fabric overall, please ask them and we'll answer them today. My brain is going to tick on that other question. The other thing I wanted to show you guys was sometimes even the pros mess up, and I wanted to say, like, be careful when you're sewing. So basically when I sew, you know how I throw my pins to the side, and I had sewn around here and sewn around here and sewn around here, and then I managed to sew that baby right in for the last few stitches. So sometimes even that happens to me. Okay, so all I'm going to do there is I'm just going to take my last little stitch out. Okay, I'll just take the pin out, and now it's got the marks. Okay, so this is one of the nice things about these pins, that is those heads are small and or thin enough that it'll just sew right through it and it's fine. I would just go back and I would stitch that over. Okay, but sometimes it happens even to me. And of course it was the last like 3 stitches is when I actually did that. So trying to figure out if I should show you. Let me show you guys how I sewed it first. So if you don't mind coming around, and then we'll come back over and we'll work on the layout. Okay, but I want to show you this just so I can then work on the layout, the next step of it. So basically what I figured out, so I was like pinning each side. So we'll sort of recap in that I was pinning here. So I would pin here. Okay, and then I would pin the other corner. And then pin the middle. That's the way I like to pin things just in general. Okay, and then I would flip this over and pin it down. Okay, so this works really well, and I did all 3 sides like that. This works really well and was really accurate, which I appreciate. But then I was sewing 80 of them together, and I thought I want to go a little bit faster and maybe less pins would be good. So I did it this way instead, where I would get this corner in there, Get it underneath here, and I have it set to a 5 width and a 3.5 length on my zigzag, okay? So I'm still zigzagging it. And I would stick this in here, hold my finger here, flip that up, hold it down. Okay. Then I could get that shoved underneath there, pull that pin out, go forward. Okay, and that seemed to work pretty well because then I could pivot, do the same thing. Okay, this one definitely requires the use of a stiletto because I'm using it a lot to get the fabric to go where I want it to. So it's holding it down here at the corner and grabbing it with the stiletto, pulling it up. Okay, and I can give it a little tug at that point to pull it into place. Okay, so here I can see it starting to bubble on me, so I'm just going to take this, I'm going to shove that back under there. I'm going to push it with my stiletto, get it to grab some of it, and then just keep going. Okay, oops, I let it go a little bit more. So you know what I'm going to do? Feed it in. Okay. So, because one of the things about this project is that when you're doing it, like the perfection of the cuddle part is not actually that important, thank goodness. Okay, so the other thing I did is that I would come up here and then I would flip this, hold it down, pull it over here. So I tried a few different techniques. If I use the pin in there the one time, it seems to be helpful, but also I didn't want to keep pinning, so I didn't. Okay. All right, we're gonna work all the way around. And I'll show you. So on that little second side, I have another little blip there, right? So I have a tiny little pleat that I was like, oh, that's going to be it. Oops. Okay. But all this is going to do is make this puffy. Like, you'll never notice this again. All right. So if you have those little goofs, don't even worry about it. All right. So that's the other way I did it with less pins. That definitely made it faster. And the air conditioning isn't in yet, so a little bit warm. Okay. All right, so once I made, but they're doing it right now, so if you hear bangs, that's what it is. Okay, so once I did all of these.
We got the question from yesterday. It was, does the royal silk polyfill clump when you wash it like the regular polyfill?
No, it doesn't clump like the regular polyfill does. Yeah. It's softer and it doesn't clump up as much. I'm not sure what it is about the construction of the regular polyfill that allows it to do that, but the royal silk doesn't. It doesn't clump. So yeah, there you go. All right, good. Thank you. If there are more questions, please ask. All right, so once I got all of those done, that's what I've done, is done all of these squares, okay? So I've got all of them, I've got all of my colors. This version that I'm doing is the 4 shades. So we've got black, white, and 2 shades of gray in it. And so I'm going to mix those up into the design that I want to do. If you were doing this with something that was various prints, you would mix it up differently. So this is just a layout I'm going to do today. And I did a little bit of work on graph paper the other day and decided this is the way I want to do it, and I would have enough pieces. So the thing is that you'll have 22 of each. And if you do it in a 9x9 layout, you have 81 squares, so you have 88 pieces that you can rearrange. So you could arrange it in all sorts of different ways. For me to arrange it in the way that I wanted to, it definitely took different numbers of each one. So you'll see that as I put it together. Okay, so I'm going to move these guys over here. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay these out so that they're going to go into the rows in the order that I would want them. All right, I want to start with black at my corner, and then I'm just going to come out. So I'm just going to lay these. I have to overlap them just a little bit so that they will fit this direction on my board. Okay, so, oops, wrong one. Okay, so I start with black, and then I'm going to do gray, the dark gray, and then I'm going to do the light gray. And I'm going to put them together in this way so I can see it actually come together as I wanted it to. You could put it out in that order too if you wanted to, if that works better for how your brain works. I realize a lot of this stuff is definitely like how your brain processes things. Okay, so I'm going to lay these out. Okay, and one thing I want to do is as I'm laying these, I'm going to try to make sure that my open spot is hanging out to the right, because that's the way it's going to be put together. Okay. So if I get that wrong, it's fine, but it'll make it a little bit easier when I'm putting this together if they're already facing the right direction. Okay, so you can see how I'm doing this, right? Does this make sense? that I'm doing it just dark, lighter, lighter, lighter. Okay. So I'll end up with a few extras, and it will be in different colors. So it won't be like an even amount of extras in each color. And I'm doing 8 rows. All right. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So one more after. Oh, 9 rows. 9 rows, not 8 rows. That 80 thing confuses me. Okay. All right. So we'll keep laying these out. Like I said, you could do it differently. When I did the little purple one, here, we'll pull this out so they can see that. Okay. When I did the little purple one, I did another couple of rows of those and I just didn't put them together. But you can see I just sort of randomly placed them. And you can absolutely do that. I wasn't trying to make a design with it. Whereas this one I'm trying to actually have it be in a specific pattern. And I wasn't doing that before. So you're welcome to do it whichever way you'd like to. There's all sorts of variations on it, obviously. Okay. All right, so that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so then I want to do one more row up there, and then I'll go down the other direction, basically. And I'm going to keep following it. When I originally laid this out, I really wanted it to come to black, and then go back to white, and then gray, and we're not going to be able to, or no. Yeah. I wanted to do it that way so it sort of mirrored from the front or the center of it, and it wouldn't do that. So I don't have enough pieces to make that happen. So if I wanted to make that happen, I would just have to make more squares of specific colors. So instead we're going to go black, dark gray, light gray. Okay. So we'll keep doing that, laying them out. All right, I'm going to lay all of these rows out. I'm going to put together a row for you, and then yeah, there we stop. And then I'll put more of these together tonight, and then we'll talk about it more tomorrow. Okay, the actual how to put the finish together. All right. Okay, and good morning. I'm glad you guys came back. Or if you're new, maybe you're new here. Like, what is happening? Okay, so then black. What did I do with my black? Oh, there it is. See, this is going to be nice. Like if I had my, I could just put it out on my kitchen table if my kitchen table were, you know, right here. But I'm working out here. It's totally fine. Just make sure that you have a big enough space. You can do this any size that you want to. You could, you know, just find a floor area to put it out on bigger. And like we talked about yesterday, you don't have to do them this small of squares either. You could do them a larger square. Okay.
If you decided to grow the size of the squares, would there just be just a 1 inch difference in the side? So would it be
I think that's what I would do.
Would it be a proportion?
I think that I would probably still just do about an inch larger, because that puts a 1/2 inch pleat in it. And I feel like that's enough. If you did it proportionally and you did, say, an 8-inch bottom square and then you did a 10-inch top square, then your pleat would be like a whole inch, and that would be way too big. It would be better if you did a couple of smaller pleats. But I really think that if you just do one pleat, it'll be enough to give it some puff. Because honestly, this will puff a lot because of the way that it's a bigger pleat for the small size, so it's going to pop up a lot. If you did a larger one, it would actually be a smaller puff, which would be just a different look, but I think it'd be kind of cool. Because you wouldn't want such a big puff, I don't think, on a large square. Just personal. Okay, look at that. I think I did it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, we got 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, I think I did it 9 by 9. Whew. All right, so I have some extras. I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is exactly what I was supposed to have. That's great. So I've got a couple of extra whites, couple, and just one, okay? So that's the way those worked out. So with this one, if I wanted to, I could make just a little small thing. You could totally make like a little pillow, but you could also make it so that if you devised your plan first of what you wanted to do, then you could make the squares exactly as you needed them. All right. Okay. So now once I've got it into these rows, I'm going to leave it for right this second. And we're going to start at the left side and then we're going to work our way across. So I'm going to show you how I do one of the rows. There's a couple of different ways of doing it. Then when I was reading different tutorials, they sort of described it differently in different ones. I'm going to sew the squares together and then fill them. Okay. So for me, I'm going to take these and I put these two together. We're going to sew this seam. We're going to sew all of these together and then we'll stuff them. So you could individually stuff them and then sew them together, but it'll be easier to sew if we don't. Okay. So the way that we do this, we can actually put these together and then we can sort of nest the seams in there. Okay. So because I've zigzagged these, they're pretty flat, but you can see there's a bunch here. There's a bunch here. That's my pleat. And I'm just going to get that in there. I'm going to smash it together real well. I'm going to stick a pin in, okay, because I want it to stay there. It'll be easier to sew. So the biggest thing here is this wants to come this direction when we're sewing, so make sure that it gets pulled back, okay. And I'm going to pin these, and then we're going to see about how it works to clip, or yeah, to wonder clip them as well, okay. All right. Okay, so I'm going to sew. Trying to figure out, so I don't know if you've ever done anything like this where you're like, okay, so do I take the whole row and try to sew it? I'm really good about messing up once I take it out of this placement and I take it to my machine. So I think I'm just going to do them one at a time and we'll just grab another one and sew it on. Because you could do them in pairs and then sew those pairs together. I know that I tend to mess that up. So now we're going to go back over to the sewing machine. I'm going to find my stiletto. There it is. All right, we're going to go back over the sewing machine. I'm going to put it on a straight stitch. And I'm going to put it at a 3. Okay, and we're going to see how that works.
I'm going to pick up a question from yesterday.
Yeah.
What's the yellow fabric?
Oh, the yellow fabric is just Kona cotton. So it's just cotton, quilting cotton from Robert Kaufman Fabrics. It was just stuff I had in my stash that I happen to have a yard of. So you need about a yard to do this for the backing fabric. And yeah, so I just picked one that I had. This worked out beautifully. Kona is nice because it's a little bit like a heavier cotton than some of the other solids. And so it works really nicely because it has a lot of stability in it. Okay. So I just sewed that straight across. You saw that, right? Okay. So now I've got my first little seam together. So this is going to hold these. So this can actually separate now into 2 flat like seam allowances. I can press those seam allowances open with that. So I'm going to take my next one and I'm going to sew it onto here. I'm going to try to nest those seams a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to pin it. I'm going to pin it, you can see I've pinned it perpendicular. And normally when I'm sewing big long swaths, I'll do it parallel to this raw edge. I'm not going to do that today because I only have a little seam to do. And I'm not trying to hold the cuddle down in the same way. Okay. So what I want to do is make sure that these stay nice and even. So this will be a place that I can use my stiletto as well to hold those together. Okay, and I'm going to do a little back stitch just because we want that to hold tightly. Okay, so you can see on here where my zigzag is and how that matches up to the seam allowance. Okay, so when we did that zigzag, it comes over just the teeny tiniest little bit in a couple of places because I wasn't super careful. But if you look over here, you'll never see it. Okay, totally fine. So even though my zigzag wasn't perfect, that's where it's going to go, is just right kind of along that little edge. Okay, so now we'll do another one. We're just going to keep doing these. I'm going to sew a row together. Okay, so do the same thing. Get my ends to match. Nest it in the middle a little bit. Okay, and that just helps it lay a little bit flatter right there. You've got a lot of layers. So if you're working on a machine that doesn't want to do it quite as easily, just make sure to take it nice and slow. Okay, and the more I hold this down with my stiletto, the flatter it goes underneath there, which will help it, and I could sort of guide it underneath the foot a little bit. Okay, and you'll definitely want to keep your hand over here so you can sort of feel it if it gets bunched up, because you'll be able to notice it with your hand if you're keeping, like, just staying aware that that happens. Okay, so same idea there. You can see how it goes right along the seam allowance. Okay, so that was sort of the point yesterday in doing that wider zigzag. So the 5 millimeter is just shy of 1/4 of an inch. So it seems to work pretty well if I do it fairly right. Okay, and I want to make sure that all of my openings are going in the same direction. Okay, so when I put on my next one, I'm going to do the same thing, make sure that my opening is on that side. Okay, do a little pinning and pinning. Okay. All right. So then I get it under the foot and worry about that middle part. Okay. All right. Okay. And then I can take this, pull it over, make sure that that's nice and even right there. And then just sew it right down the edge. Okay, I'm sure we're going to get to one where I was more off with the zigzag, and we'll see that.
We're going to have the giveaway today?
Oh, yeah, of course. Same thing. Four strips, or the 5-pack of strips. Sorry. Oh, yeah, here we go. Okay. And the backing fabric. So this one I got over. You can see, like, my 1/4 inch seam is on the other side of my zigzag. My zigzag's going into the fabric. Here we go. Oh, look at that. We can't really see it. There's a teeny tiny little zig in there. Okay. So even if it happens, please don't worry. There's the teeny tiny little one. That once I get a puff in here, no one will ever notice that. So please do not worry. You can see that goes over pretty far. If it happens, don't even stress about it. Okay. Just keep on sewing. We'll pretend it never happened. Right? If there's no pics, it didn't happen. Is that right? So I'm just we're going to hide it in there and it'll be gone forever. No one will notice. So the way it is with a lot of mistakes, quote unquote, with Cuddle is that you really can just kind of hide them. And people are so enamored by its softness that they'll never care. Okay. All right. So this is definitely a time that you want to use your walking foot too. So make sure you've got that on there. This is a digital dual feed that's on my baby lock. Look at that. It's coming right along. It's starting to look like something. Move these over here so I can grab them. All right. We'll just keep plugging along. Okay. So I just pin the beginning, the end, and then sew it. Okay, and I don't know if you've noticed, but at the beginning I haven't really backstitched, but I sort of like don't let it go too fast. So it kind of secures the stitch just a little bit. And then I let it start sewing, and then the end, I try to backstitch it. And it's just the tiniest bit, but because I'm going to put some stress on that seam when I'm stuffing it, I want to make sure that it's caught nicely and it's not going to pull. Okay, so when I lay this down, I want to make sure that this gets pulled this direction so that my fabric is out of the way. And then I'll pin it in place. Okay, so we have 9 rows like this we're going to do. I'm going to do 1 row today. I might do 2. Actually, I'm going to do 2 rows because then I can show you how to sew them together. And then the rest of them I'll do later. But this is actually a pretty fairly easy process. And this is going to be the same way if you wanted to do this out of cotton as well. I think this would be a fun one we were talking about yesterday that's a great scrap buster. And I think it would be awesome to use with a whole bunch of different textures, because you could mix this with, you know, Cuddle and cotton and chenille and terry and all sorts of fun stuff to make it a really textural quilt. Oh, we got to try the adding the poly pellets to one of these too. I might just do it to one of the rows and see what happens. Maybe with those extras. That's what I'll do. With the extras, yeah, with the poly pellets, and we'll see about making it weighted. Because I think that's a fun idea. And I think it would work actually really well.
Call it a beanbag.
Beanbag blanket. We'll have a whole nother name. That's a good one. Okay. I bet that's sort of what it feels like. Yeah, totally had beanbags. Yeah, no, it was not just you. Totally. Okay. All right, so that should be my one whole row, right? So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so there's one whole row. So this is the size of my center is going to be square. All right, so now I've got one row. You ready to do another one with me, guys? And then we'll put it together. All right. Let's do it again. Okay, and just because people have said before, like they like watching the sew-alongs because they get to figure out how long it takes to sew those 81 squares, or 88 squares is what I ended up doing. I think it took about 4 hours. I wasn't crazy trying to do it as fast as I could, so, you know, I'm just taking my time. But about 4 hours is what it took. Little back stitch and clipping it. Okay, so that's working out really nicely with that zigzag, even when it wasn't perfect. Okay, still catching it just fine. Right, and do the same thing. Like I was saying, this would be a great project for, like, if you bought a charm pack somewhere and then you hate that charm pack now. I'm sure you could just use it on the back here. I don't know. I'm sure I'm not the only one who buys fabric and then I'm like, what was I thinking? I have plenty that I was like, what? Why? I bought this for a project. I don't remember the project. I cuddle like that too. All right. We're just going to go all the way across. Make sure you don't sew over your pins, please. Obviously, I don't always get that advice right, but try to not just sew over the metal part of the pin. It's really important. It will break your needle and causes a lot of problems. So be careful with that one.
Did you mention earlier you wanted to try out the Wonder Clips with this as well?
Oh, yeah. I did. Okay. So what I was thinking is that I can use it. I kind of like to pin the first if I'm going to, if it's difficult like this to hold these together, because the pins just hold better. So let's see if the clip will actually do okay with it too. Okay. Because that's a little bit faster. Okay, so you can see how these want to pull apart, and that's what I'm using that little stiletto for, is to get that, because these want to separate, and I don't want that to happen. So we'll see if it holds. Oh, looks like it's going to hold that just fine. Great. See? New way to use that tool. I love Wonder Clips. So now let me see if I can get it, how well it will hold. For that first little bit, if I pin it here, or clip it, and I clip it here, let's see if I can get it underneath the foot okay. All right. All right, then I can get it started. Yep. And that works too. Look at that, guys. And throw your Wonder Clips in there. It doesn't hold it quite as perfectly as the pins, but I know a lot of people really prefer Wonder Clips. Okay. I like the way these colors are working together. Decided to do one that was, yeah, not as quite as bright and colorful as some of the other stuff we've done. You know, we want to make sure everybody's happy, including people who like grays. That's me. If I were going to make this for myself. Okay. Do the same thing. We'll see how this works for the rest of it. All right. Yeah, so I can feel that this wants to shove forward. Do you see that happening? As with the Wonder Clips, don't hold it quite as tightly as the pins do. So, yeah. So it's kind of personal preference onto which you like better. I don't mind the pins, but I know a lot of people don't love them as much as I do. And like I said, that one thing you want to make sure that you're doing is getting all of those open ends over here. It'd be really easy because we're only sewing the one. It'd be really easy to get this on here sideways and get this over here. If that happens, you're going to have to take it out. So I'm sort of waiting for myself to do that. It hasn't happened yet, but you know, we have 2 more. There's time. Okay. Okay, and I'm doing this with a 3 stitch length, and that's a little bit shorter than we normally do for cuddle stuff, but because I want to hold this nice and tight and it's going to get some stress.
Let's see if I can get out here and get your hand over here.
Okay.
Because you're always doing a lot of work over there.
It's
Never gets shown.
it's true. Kind of doing stuff everywhere. Okay. Sew that along. Woo, that was close. Okay, was that the last? Nope, one more. One more. All right. And you can see, like, I kind of, you know, I'll flip-flop between, so I like the pin better than the Wonder Clip for myself, so I'm going to use that. But sometimes I'm more careful about certain things than others. And yeah, it's just really like trying different techniques is really, I think, the best way to learn, honestly. Also, you want to make sure that when these are stitching together, the cuddle is a knit, and so it kind of wants to curl together a little bit more. So it wants to do this where it, I don't know, I get a gap in there, but I can easily just pull this, and that's what I want to do, is I want to make it straight. So I don't want the cotton to get curled up in there at all. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of keep it a little tauter as I'm going. Okay, you can see that stiletto comes in really handy to get into places that I couldn't otherwise get with my finger. All right, so now, I'm gonna find it, there we go. All right, so now we've got 2 rows, right? They should be the right length if I did them correctly. That's always the trick. Like, did I do it right? All right, so now I've got the 2 rows. All right, so these, all of these. So what I would do if I were you when I were making this without an audience, I would just make all of these rows all the way across, and then I would come back and stuff them, doing one at a time. But we're just going to do these 2 rows, and then later I'll do the rest of these. Okay, so once we've gotten them to this point, then we need to stuff them, and then we'll pin them and then pin them to the next row. Okay, so let's use the polyfill because I have it. And then we'll see how this works. And then I can actually like test it out later and do it the whole wash and see what happens. Okay, so this is just the regular, or the original, as it says, polyfill. Okay, so this is the stuff you can find all over the place. You probably have some in your craft closet. Okay. And I'm basically just going to take a little handful. The key is to try to get the same amount for each one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one that's basically like my example that I can see every time. So for me, I have a hard time getting the consistency if I'm not having something to look at to compare it to. So we'll see how this one works. I think this will work okay. Let's see. There we go. Ta-da. Okay, so I just stuff that in there. Okay, stuff it all in, and then I've got to do that little pleat again. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing as I did before, and I'm going to pin where that center mark is, and then I'm going to bring it up. Okay, and then I'm going to pin it. Okay, so now I've gotten that pleat is tucked in there. This is straight, these edges match now. Okay, so then I can sew these together. But I'm going to stuff this entire thing and then sew it. Okay. So get a little bit more. Stuff this in there. If I can. There we go. Okay. And then I'm going to take this, line it up with the line that was on there. You can't see it. There it is. Okay. So here's the center line. Do the same thing. I'm going to push all of this over to the side to try to get it out of my way. And when I'm sewing, I'm going to do that even more. Okay, so I noticed that was a little bit difficult to hold this because it wants to fight back because of the stuffing that's in there. So I'm going to pin this and then take this pin out. Okay.
New name, Cuddle Ravioli.
It is like ravioli. Nice. It's a ravioli quilt. Okay, so for those of you who are new to this, we can take all the new names. It's great. We had a few people who'd never seen these before. And yeah, ravioli quilt. Cuddle ravioli. I like it.
So you're not really stuffing these super tight.
No.
Full. So what a percentage do you think?
You can see they're pretty puffy. This is just about a good handful for me. Okay, so this will give it be nice big balls in there. What I would say is that I would test a couple, because this will be a thing that when you put it through your machine, and I know on mine, because of the digital dual feet, this is a little bit, I'll have to work around this basically. So make sure that you don't stuff too much for your machine to handle. Just give them a shot. So yeah, a nice little handful. Okay. I don't know how to explain how full it is. It's not stuffed. I mean, you can see. So if I pushed it all the way to the bottom, I've got like an inch here at the top or so that's empty. Okay. You can really stuff it however much you want to stuff it. Overstuffing it will just make it more difficult to sew. So I would suggest against that. Okay. So we'll pin this. I'll show you another a technique when we're sewing it together that I use to make things like that a little easier to sew. Okay.
Now I'm hungry.
Are they coming up with new names? Or are you just thinking about ravioli?
So I'm just thinking about ravioli.
Ravioli's good. All right. Just pin it and bring that over. Okay. And I don't know that there's a faster way of doing this. I didn't figure one out. Okay. And you could do these all the rows at one time. I just wouldn't do it because it's a lot of pinning. I like to sort of batch things, but then sometimes when it's things like this that I'm like, this isn't the funnest part, I just want to do it a little at a time. Doing all the squares actually wasn't too bad, and I was able to kind of whip through those with a little bit of TV and, you know, sew some squares. Okay. Oops. I'm going to disassemble my rows underneath here, unfortunately. I'm going to have to rearrange it and be like, what order were they in? So I guess I have a movie to watch today while I'm doing the rest of these. To figure out something. Tell me what I should watch, you guys. It's the best way to, like, you know, kill some time is do some little sewing stuff that's kind of brainless. Throw some TV on. Yeah. Okay. And when I pull it out, like I said, I'm just sort of double checking to see if it's about the same size as this one, because this was my first one that I used as a sample. It's really easy to start getting them off, is what I realize for myself with other projects that I'm trying to stuff the same amount. It can get difficult. Okay, and you'll probably notice that I keep shoving it down there. And that's what I do, is just trying to shove it out of the way, get this flat. Okay. I've noticed, and you probably did too, is that the cuddle will want to, like, sort of unpleat just a little bit and be, you know, a little bigger. So if I have a little extra on the cotton side, this is fine, because the cuddle will stretch into it, or just, you know, feed its way into it. All right, last one. Okay, and I'm not going to use my last one here. I'm going to save that for my next row, so I know how much to put in that row too, so that it's consistent. Okay, so get that in there. Making it even on this side. Pinning it on the line. And we'll bring it over. Okay.
Mary says she always takes a picture of the layout before she starts putting this stuff together, so if she gets it, if the cat walks through it or something.
Yeah,
you know, like,
yeah.
You can put it back the way you found it.
Right, because it's really, especially if you've done something like complicated and fancy, it's really easy to lose track of it, and then it's frustrating. So, yes, it's a good idea to take a picture of it. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come along here and I'm going to do that parallel pin because this side is longer and it wants to buckle up. So I'm actually just going to pin this. Do you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a couple of them with the Wonder Clip and we'll see how much I like it. Like I said, so much of this really is just personal preference. So please, if I don't love it, it doesn't mean you shouldn't try it. Okay. Then what this does also is it keeps this flat, but it also keeps the batting over there where I want it and not crawling out that little hole. Okay, you can see on this side it wants to stay flat just fine, but it's on this bigger, the bigger quote-unquote half that it wants to open up. Okay, so I'm going to have a bunch of pins in here, so be careful. Don't stab yourself too much. Okay, all right, so now I've got this whole row sewn. So you have two options here, okay? So one is that you can actually just pin this to this next row and sew that together, okay? I don't like, oh sorry, I hit the mic. I don't like to do that because what happens is then I'm trying to fight this row of batting and trying to make sure this stays together while also getting it to adhere to this in the right place, which will frustrate me. So I will take the slower route and I'm going to sew this whole thing with the zigzag and then I'll sew these two together. Okay, so you can do either one. You could sew the two rows together right now or sew one and then adhere and sew them together. Okay, so I'm going to just zigzag this guy. So we're going to do that. Okay, so I'm going to put it back on the zigzag on the same one. So I'm going to do a 3.5 again, just like I did on the first. Okay, so now it's going to look the same basically on all sides. Okay, so I'm just going to zigzag. Okay, and the second pin actually will sort of hold that in place a little bit. Okay, I'm going to take that pin out so I don't sew over it. So this is where it will get a little bit funky. If you can see back here, I got a whole lot of puff that's going to go underneath. So if you've got a regular walking foot, you won't have to argue with this thing back here. But if I just keep it over and keep it pushed down, it's fine. Okay. I'm going to get in there, take that pin out, stitch over it. So this pin I've got far enough over, if I've got it at about a ½ an inch, I'm not going to hit it with my zigzag. Okay, so it means I can leave it in there a little bit longer. And now I can take it, whoops, there we go. Now I can take it out. All right, I'll bring this down the front. Okay, so just keep going here. If you can, these can open up. If you don't, it's totally fine. You could also do it so they were all going down, so you could then nest your seams. Okay. If you don't pay attention to what happens to your seam allowances, which is my usual MO, you'll be fine too. Okay. So can you come around and see the bulk back here? Like, check this out. Oops, sorry. So if you look, you can see the bulkiness, the craziness of coming around the walking foot. So you're going to have to argue with this the whole time. So that's what I'm doing, is pushing this out of the way so it doesn't get stuck up in there. Okay, so make sure that when you're doing this, that you're doing that, keeping that out of the way while you're sewing, because it will definitely want to get stuck up around things. Okay, even a little walking foot, but seriously, I can just press it down and it's fine. And I've taken the pins out up there, so there's no fear of me getting stabbed by a pin up there. Not like in some of the other projects where I leave pins in for a long time. Get that to grab. All right. Okay. I'm going to take this pin out, because I could tell I was going to try to stitch over the head if I wasn't careful. Okay. So just take this nice and slow. I want to get that underneath the foot before I take those pins out. because it's going to want to move on me. So every time this kind of wants to curl under, and I just sort of have to flatten it out. If you notice that, like, just wants to go differently. So that worked okay with the Wonder Clip. It's holding it down all right. It's a lot of puff back there, man. So as you can see, this gets a little bit puffy, and then as we go and we have more and more rows of it, it's going to be crazy. Okay, so can you pull back in so you can see this? So this is like a funky thing that it likes to do. So you can see it starts to, like, I kind of have to argue with it to keep it here. So that's what I wanted to show you, is like the whole time you're working with it, this is going to be doing things over here that you're like, what are you doing? Please stay in place. And you just have to do that. Just force it down, push it into place, pin it, do all that stuff. Okay. But it will look a little bit weird and kind of be wanting to go in other directions. So don't feel like you're doing something wrong. Okay. All right, we're almost there. Okay. Take that out. So if you don't have one of these stilettos yet, please order one before you make this project. This is definitely one where I'm like, it makes all the difference in me being able to handle that fabric. It's the By Annie stiletto that I love so much. Yeah. So it's this guy. Bunch of quilt stores have it. It's really super popular. And it's just got a really good handhold, and it stabs that fabric super nicely. All right. So now, whew, look at that. We've got a puffy row. Ta-da. I could just wear it as like a scarf now, I think. Yeah. Just kidding. I'm not gonna. No.
Wear it on an airplane if you were ever allowed to fly again.
Oh, yeah. You put 3 of those rows together, you have your own little travel pillow. Look at that. Okay, so now I've got my puffy row and my not puffy row, and I'm going to sew those together. Okay, so for me, it's a little bit easier because now I've gotten, this is why I like to do this, because now I've gotten this under control. So now I'm just going to argue with the seams. Okay, and unlike quilting, so in quilting, we would want to make sure that all the seams were nesting the same direction and they fit really nicely together. This one, they're going to sort of nest back and forth, and maybe they might be flat in a couple of places. I might have opened the seam, and that's just how it's going to go. I don't have to be too persnickety because you won't be able to tell. The way that Cuddle works, it's totally fine. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball, see what it did, and then I'm going to try to get my seams to match up. Okay, so I'm going to get those to match, and then I'm going to pin it, and we'll go to the next one. And then in between, I'm going to use the Wonder Clips just to hold it in place. I think that's going to work okay. Okay, so I'm just pushing these. So most of my seams, it looks like, went that direction. So on this one, I'm pushing them this direction. Okay, and like I said, if they change in between, it's totally fine. What you don't want to do is get them too far off. So it'll be, you'll be able to see if your seams nest or not. So make sure that they're matching as much as possible. Okay. We're just going to keep it. You can see I just kind of eyeball it in there, see how they're looking. You can feel it as well. It's just the fabric is thick enough that you can't really rely on that like you would for quilt making with cotton. Okay, last one. Okay, get that one nested in there. And then of course I'm going to pin the end because I want those to match up as well, and for that to stay together. Okay, so then in between those, I'm going to grab my Wonder Clips, and I'm going to clip in between. We're going to see how this works. Okay, actually, where are my bigger ones? I'm going to try the bigger ones and see how they work, because they'll hold down a little bit more fabric, and I feel like they might work nicely, even though they're pretty big, but I can get them to clamp a bunch and hold back that stuffing is what I'm thinking, is that I can If I clip it here, it's going to hold the stuffing away for me. So let's give that a try. Because the Wonder Clips won't hold too far into it, only, you know, a little more than 1/4 inch. Okay. So that's going to hold a big bunch and push that stuffing back. So you can see the stuffing wants to come up, but I can kind of shove it back there with my fingers and put these clips on. Okay. I didn't try this before, so we'll see if it works, guys. It might be, you know, the miracle solution. It might be a silly idea. We'll find out. Because definitely the stuffing being in there makes it a little bit different to sew. Okay, and in the same regard, these are kind of nesting together. Okay, these little pleats that were in the sides, they're now nesting together here. Okay. So I just try to get those. I sort of work the stuffing down and then clipping it. Okay. Do the same thing. Okay, and if you get a little bit of stuffing caught in your stitching here, it's fine. So don't worry too much about that. All right, one more. All right, so now I've got this all clipped and pinned together. Okay, and now we're going to sew it one more time. So I didn't really show you guys before, but we'll note it this time is that I have it sort of down. I'm going to move those. I'm just going to have to redo them later. I have it down the side a little bit because this is hefty. Okay, so this whole thing now with all of the stuffing in it actually, you know, it has a little bit more weight in it. And so if I have it this way, it's going to be pulling. I can feel the weight of it. So it's going to be pulling against my needle the whole time while I'm sewing it. I don't want that to happen. So while I'm sewing it, I'm going to keep it over here, let it feed around and back onto the table until the very end, and then I'll straighten it up. Okay. Another way that you can deal with this is if you have the table space to push your table or your machine forward a little bit, then it can come that direction. So you don't want to push it too far away because you don't want to be sewing clear out here, but if you can push it up just a little bit, you'll have space in front. Okay. So making sure that you've got space to lay this is important. Cuddle is just a heavier fabric, and then we add the stuffing to it, and it's a lot. That's a big mess right there that I'm making. Oops. Okay. So I'm going to put this back over to a straight stitch. Okay, and then I'm going to up it to a 3 where we were before, because that's what we're doing at our seams at, is a 3 stitch length straight. Okay, and then I'm going to stitch a little, a back stitch, and then we'll just stitch right along this edge. Okay, so once I get in here, then my foot is sort of going to hold all of that stuffing in place, and I'm going to keep my hand over here to keep it in place to the side while I'm sewing it. Okay. Use my little stiletto to get that to go through till I need to move things. Okay. All right. So we're just going to sort of snake this around.
I want to back up so you can get a big
okay.
wide shot.
Okay. Nope, there it went. And try to get all of that caught, make sure our seams match. If they don't, we'll go over there and check this when we're done, make sure that it caught both sides, because there are times that it, you know, very easily could have moved on me. And so we'll go back and check those. So we make sure not to miss anything. Okay, because if we do, we're just going to go right back over it, and then we'll catch it. So that might be a place that I'm like, oh, pins would be good, because pins hold things better. Okay, so these seams are bulky. Take your time with it. Yeah, don't worry too much. Okay. I feel like that back side is wanting to move on me more than I want it to. So I'm just double checking it. Okay. The big puffy snake coming out the back is pretty funny. Like a little it's just chugging along back there. Okay. All right. make sure don't sew over my pins. Keep my fabrics together. Okay. So if it gets caught up on your foot, just make sure that you take it out. Okay, don't let it get too caught up there. Oh no, the bobbin thread is almost empty. We're playing bobbin chicken now. Who's gonna win, the machine or me? We have a whole 4 inches. Yep. We're gonna see. I'm just gonna keep pressing the button and be like, no, keep sewing. We'll see. Oh, there's more. I see it. Nobody else does this, right? We all are like, no, there's more. I swear, there's more. There might not be. I might have to sew this whole thing back over again and I'll be sad, but sometimes I've won. Look at how close, guys. Look at, I almost won that game. Almost. I was an inch off. Darn it. All right. Well, now I only, we're just going to put navy thread in there because that's what I've got right here. So we're just going to flip that around. Not sure where my other bobbins are. I usually try to have some grays up there. All right. I got a little stuffing. Come on. Oh. There we go. Okay. All right. Quick and easy. All right. All right. Let's redo that bottom. It was so close. Really. We could have all done a happy dance if we'd have made it, but instead we're going to redo it. Okay, I'm actually going to redo a little bit of that seam because it's kind of wobbly. Okay. So you can see I wobbled a little because I was having to turn off that alert that kept telling me, you're going to run out of bobbin. And I was like, no, I'm not. And then I did. Oh, good. All right, for a second there, I thought I wasn't going to sew, and I was sad. Okay. All right. So now I just want to make sure that I caught it everywhere. It looks like it. Okay. So this part here, I can see I got a little bit close. So even though I caught it, I almost didn't catch it. Okay. So right here, it's a little bit funky. So I'm going to fix this just so I can show you guys why I would do that. Okay. So, because this just hangs out a little bit more than I want it to over here. Okay. So I'm actually going to come in here. And I'm just sort of going to feel for the stitches. Okay, so I've just got just the tip of it down there. My hand is far enough away, I'm not going to cut myself. But I'm just sort of, just tapping those stitches, taking them out. Okay, so this is the easiest way to take out stitches in Cuddle. Using a regular seam ripper is just not very easy. You end up cutting the fabric more than the stitches, which is irritating. So, all right, so there we go. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to repin it. Oh, I see what happened, see, because my ends didn't match here. So I caught it on one, but not on the other. That's what happened. So I didn't sew that one evenly. Oops. Things happen, you know, sometimes. I don't sew it anywhere near right. Okay. So I'm going to sew from there to there. So I'm going to pin a bunch here because I want to catch it all. And then I'll just redo it and make those seams match from up here to over here. I'm going to overlap where I start and overlap where I end. All right. Okay. Let's give this a try. Oh, I'm going to do it differently with the batting on the, or the stuffing on the bottom. Let's see if this works. Okay, so I'm going to try to aim with this and make sure that matches up and then catch all of my zigzags a little bit better than I did last time. Trying to feel which way my seam goes. And it's heading down on the bottom one. Oh. Okay. All right. Now I'm just going to aim for this over here so that I can overlap it. There went my Wonder Clips. All right. And then I can take my, clip the thread and see if it worked. Nah, it's still showing a little bit. I'm going to do it from this side. Okay, guys. See, sometimes it doesn't work. I really don't want those little stitches to show because it's on the dark fabric. So it's going to end up just being a little bit bigger seam allowance. So it's because I just want to move and they're just different on either side. Okay. So I'm not taking that stitch out because I'm going to just let it stay so I can see where I want to sew and then just cover that up. Okay, and because I changed the bobbin to blue, it was really easy to see. That was great. All right, that's better. Whew. Okay. So you can see I got the corners to match up pretty good. There's a few spaces where it shows. If I wanted to, I could take those out or I can re-clip them. Yeah, that one I kind of want to redo too. So you see, this is where I get really nitpicky about things. Every once in a while I'm like, let's be picky. And I'm going to leave those stitches in. And I'm just going to re-stitch over it so it catches a little further down. Okay. At this point, if they are not perfectly square, it's absolutely fine. Yeah, better. Okay. All right, so now I've got my big puff strip sewn to my not puff strip. So now I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did before, where I'm going to stuff this whole row. I'm going to stitch it. I'm going to zigzag along the edge. I'll sew it to another row. So the first thing I have to do before I can move any further is I have to sew all of these rows together. So I'm going to sew a whole lot of rows. I have 7 more to sew together. And then I will stuff this one, sew it to the next row, stuff it, sew it to the next row. Okay, that's my day. I'm not sure what you're going to be doing, but I'm going to finish this puff quilt, and then tomorrow we're going to put it together like I did with this one. Okay, so we're going to add a couple of rows, and this is what I'm going to use that ladybug print for because I think it's super cute. So we're going to use the ladybug print for this border, and then I'll use the gray that'll come around the back. So we're going to finish it like a self-binding blanket with that extra row. I've seen it lots of ways that you can finish it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. But we're going to do this, and we are adding batting to it actually. So you don't have to, but you totally can. And yeah, so that's what we're going to do tomorrow is finish that up, how to add the borders, how to do the self-binding part of it. Wanted to remind you that next week we are doing the robe pattern, okay? So this is the Indigo Junction Classic Kimono robe. We're doing this one next week, so if you want to buy some Luxe Cuddle or some Embrace or some terry cloth beforehand, you can sew it along with me next week. The week after that, we're really excited to do these patterns. Whoopsie. These patterns, she has all these goodies in here from Latifah Saphir's Quilt Cadets. I'll deal with that in a second. Okay, so these are her Quilt Cadet patterns that she's done in conjunction, a couple of them are in conjunction with Little Pincushion Studio, which specifically design patterns that are kid-friendly. So if you've got children in your life, little ones, teenagers who want to learn how to sew, these are great projects. I think these mood pillows are going to be super fun. So you can do all sorts of ones. The little monster face just cracks me up. Like, be a great way for a kid to tell you what kind of mood they're in today. So we're doing this for the kids cuddle camp that we're doing. Cuddle Kids Camp. I can't remember which way we're doing it. In 2 weeks, and those would be. So if you want to get a head start on getting the patterns, those patterns are available through her websites through. Believe it's LatifahSaphirStudios.com, and you can download those patterns probably at quiltcadets.com too. So and we'll put that link up there if we don't have it already. Also, you can join us on I Love Cuddle, the Facebook group, where we post all sorts of fun things about the things that we're making. We get to show off stuff all the time, which is great. I love that group. It's very fun to see what people are making. So yeah, I think that's it. We're going to post this baby on Facebook, then we'll be back, post it on YouTube. You can watch it later. And then we'll be back tomorrow with, a whole finished middle and then we'll just keep going. And I'll show you how to finish it up, a couple of different ways that you can do that, and we'll have a little puff blanket. All right? It's a puff quilt. All right. Thanks so much for coming, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Winner?
Oh, winner. Sorry. Winner. There it is. I didn't even see the message come up. Sorry. My apologies, especially to Sherry H. of Greensboro, North Carolina, because I almost missed you. So Sherry, thanks for joining us today. You can get a hold of us, or we'll get a hold of you, and we will let you know how to get the prize to you. And we'll be giving you a 5-pack of the strips, as well as the backing fabric and some fiber fill, so that you can make your own puff quilt. All right. Thank you so much. Is that it? We're good?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. Whew, thank goodness he's here to help me out. All right. Thanks, guys. See you tomorrow. Happy sewing.
Happy sewing.